Hi, welcome back to Broken and Brilliant. I'm Carrie O'Toole with Carrie O'Toole Ministries, and I'm joined again today by my friend Mike Berry. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Actually, thanks for having me back.
You bet, you bet. So if you missed it, last time we talked with Mike a little bit about how he came into the adoption world, because that was not something growing up that he ever thought about. It wasn't part of his world. It wasn't part of his life. And so if you're interested in hearing about that, go back and check out part 1 here. But today we're going to talk about, Mike, why don't you give us just a short glimpse into what your family looks like, and then we can talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
Excellent. Yeah. So I've been married to Kristen for 20 years. We got married in the late 90s, and we have 8 children, all through adoption. 6 out of our 8 children were adopted through foster care. 2 were adopted privately through a private agency. And we also have, because our children range from ages 10, our youngest is 10, our oldest is 33. We also have grandchildren. We have 3 grandchildren. So that's been a cool blessing.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I didn't realize you guys had only been married 20 years when you, in the last podcast, you said your oldest was 33. And I'm like, okay, there's kind of an interesting little story, isn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. If you every time we tell that story in front of like a non-adoption audience, like, you always see the looks on people's faces, and people are like, wait, right. Either they're an adoptive family or something scandalous happened in the elementary school, so it's like 2 different extremes there. So, so no, and then we always tell them, well, we're an adoptive family, and people are like, oh, good, thank goodness. Thank goodness that 10-year-olds weren't having children, so.
That's awesome.
That's the makeup of our family. We live on, I didn't say this in the last recording, but we live on a farm out in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. It's amazing. We love every second of it.
Oh, that's so cool.
We have animals, we have bees, we have chickens, we have all that stuff out here. So it's really cool. And so, that's kind of the makeup of our family. That's the Berry family right there.
For an adoptive family dealing with trauma issues too, because just getting away from, we had what we called our little house on the prairie days. We moved out to the country for a couple of years and lived on 10 acres, and it was just crazy. We were so far away from everything, which is why we ended up moving back, because
right.
This is ridiculous. But we had chickens and we had a horse that bucked a few kids, stuff like that. But I just think that's really, not a lot of people are blessed to be able to do that, and that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we needed it too. We are a weird people who could either live on a place like this. I'm looking out our window right now at my barn and my pastures. We could live out here, or it's not unlikely for Kristen and I someday to move to the city. Mm-hmm. We're weird. We're really weird like that. Yeah. Like we can do 2 different extremes. So
that's cool.
So but our kids love it out here. We moved from the poster child of suburbia that in the community we lived in out here, and our kids love it. So they love it out here.
That's great. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, and then I want to talk about your newest book.
Sure. Yeah. So I run a virtual support, resource, mentoring, and training company for foster and adoptive parents. We exist completely online, with the exception of us traveling and doing in-person trainings and teachings across the country. And we've been traditionally known as Confessions of an Adoptive Parent. That's the name of our blog, our podcast.
That's so awesome.
Thank you. Well, it may be changing. That's the reason why I say we've traditionally been known like that. But in order for our team and for all of us with our team to better align ourselves with what we actually do in terms of providing mentoring and resources and training online, we're looking at potentially renaming the company. But as it stands right now, we are a blog, podcast. We have a membership site that offers on-demand training, resources, video, face-to-face interactions like we're doing right now. And we also have a series of online courses too that we offer throughout the year. So that's what we do throughout the year. And of course, we travel. Kristen and I travel to conferences all year long and speak and teach and encourage foster and adoptive parents. So
and man, I just love what you do, because being an adoptive mom twice. I know how desperately these families need training. And bless them, the system tries, but they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah,
And
it's true. Yeah, that's true.
it's sad because many of them have never done this. And so they come into, I'm a social worker. Oh, I think it'd be great to be able to set up adoptive families and help them and do home studies and stuff, but they have never lived with a child with trauma.
True.
And
Yeah.
the training
True.
for them is not what I think it needs to be. So a lot of parents, if all we had was that, which is all I had, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And so to have some people who have been doing this in the trenches for years and
Yeah.
have spoken all over the place and have gotten input and feedback from family after family and all the different therapists out there. And, it's like taking encyclopedias worth of stuff and you guys put it all together. And I think that's just fantastic. If I were to refer anybody for adoptive or foster resources, you guys would be one of the first because you've got so much built up. So thank you for what you're doing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So how do people
absolutely.
find you with that kind of stuff? Just real quick.
Well, there's a couple of different ways, and this is also part of our streamlining process right now because we're kind of like in different, we have all these different channels that we're like trying to bring together. But primarily, our blog, confessionsofanadoptiveparent.com, is where you can find us. But then you can also go over, check out our podcast at honestlyadoption.com. That's where you'll find our podcast. In terms of that online course I was telling you about, our primary course is Trauma Knowledge Masterclass, which is all about helping parents gain a simple understanding of trauma and then gain an understanding of behaviors that result from trauma and how to better manage those behaviors.
So
and that's
can you give us
actually,
an example of something like that? What do you mean by that? So trauma knowledge, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, well, we have realized that one of the most transformational things about us, our journey personally, was when we gained a working knowledge of how trauma changes our child's brain. When somebody finally explained it to us and when it finally clicked with us, we realized, wow, not only does this give me insight into why they're behaving the way they're behaving, but it also gives me insight into how I can better respond and essentially become a better parent for them. And so out of that realization from our own transformation, we developed this course that's based all around gaining knowledge, and then out of that knowledge, how do I better manage behaviors? How do I help my child re-regulate? And how do I share this with people like teachers or guidance counselors or pastors or coaches, who work with my child on an ongoing basis? So that's become our flagship course that we offer throughout the year. Actually, we offer it. We open it up for enrollment once a year, but then there's also some special ways that people can gain access. Like your listeners, your followers could potentially gain access to. We also have an agency edition of that course. You're talking about giving agencies, ministries, organizations content to train their people. Well, we actually offer a 2-year agency ministry organization license that allows them to show the training videos unlimited for 2 years to an unlimited group of people, an unlimited number of people. So, but yeah, that's all. That's how that course has been developed. That's the value behind it, because it transforms when we gain knowledge. And the thing about knowledge is knowledge is a pathway to transformation, because anytime you have a working knowledge of something, then you know how to respond. You're better equipped. The example I always use is this past fall when it was election season, and I'm not going to get political, I promise, but I will say, I will not get into that. But all I will say is that I realized going into election season that I was informed on some of the issues and the candidates, but I really didn't have a working knowledge of it. So we did research on the candidates here in our state and nationally. And out of that knowledge, out of that research, we gained knowledge, and then it gave us an avenue to better respond, and to respond accurately.
So you're responding and not reacting as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very much about a big value within that course is about regulating ourselves.
Yeah.
Making sure that our emotions are in check, because we can be the biggest trigger for our kids.
If you have what's your biggest tip on how to get yourself regulated again if you feel yourself starting to flip out?
Well, wow, that's a really big
Put you on the
question.
spot here.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I think that there's a couple of ways that I would answer that. The first is that we actually provide an exercise often with our clients and with our students. That's simply, and it sounds really simple, but it's a simple reminder that you continue to rehearse in your mind, and it's a three question reminder. Anytime you begin to see your child becoming anxious, or agitated, or frustrated, or they're snapping back at you, which happens often, we remind ourselves. And the three questions are: what happened in the past, what's happening presently, and what's about to happen. And what we call that surveying the trauma landscape. So it's like you zoom out to 30,000 feet.
Right.
You see the landscape, and you can remind yourself, okay, this child has a trauma history, and that affects present behaviors. And then what's happening presently, our schedule may have changed, or it may be a season that reminds them of loss. Whatever it is that's happening presently may be causing these behaviors, or it may be something that's about to happen. School's about to start. Summer break's about to start. They're about to go to and visit a birth family member.
Right.
So reminding yourselves, remember what happened in the past, what may be happening presently, and what may happen in the future. Continually reminding yourself, and then also reminding yourself that that the trauma history affects present behavior. Yeah. Reminding yourself that this is not a bad kid behaving badly. This is a window into something bigger. This is a glimpse into something. There's something bigger going on. I think that helps us stay calm as parents, just continuing to remind ourselves that. But then I also think it's really valuable for parents to be connected to other parents, that they can say, listen, I just need you to pray for me right now. I just need to connect. Can I call you real quick? I'm about to go into an IEP meeting. My child is absolutely losing their mind, and I just need, we do that. My wife has her best friend, Nicole. The two of them are on the phone with each other all the time. Nicole calls Kristen. Kristen calls Nicole. Her husband, Johnny, is my best friend. We are texting each other all the time. I think that when you have somebody in your corner, as we like to say it, holding your arms up, when you feel exhausted, that allows you. There have been so many times where I have sent my buddy John a text that has said, remember why the behavior is happening. Remember that he's not just trying to ruin your day. He's anxious about something. Yeah. Nicole will send Kristen a text all the time that will say, hey, just remember, she doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
He doesn't mean it.
That's good.
You need that. That helps you stay regulated. So reminding yourself of what I just shared, to remind the trauma landscape, and then also having somebody cheering for you in your corner. I just think that helps us stay calm. And when we are calm and firm wins the day.
Absolutely.
Bottom, calm and firm wins the day.
It's so interesting because I coach families just like we're doing right here too. And I'm always the one giving this advice. But when you're saying this, I can feel myself taking a breath. And going, and you can always tell with somebody that they're starting to relax a little bit when you hear that big sigh. It's like, okay, I know that just got through, and you're calming down a little bit. And even that just helps, because we forget to even breathe sometimes.
Yeah.
Life gets,
you're
just like, breathe. Don't forget to breathe.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, tell us about your books. You've got two out, and then one that's just ready to come out, correct?
Yes. So in 2018, I released my first book, which was Confessions of an Adoptive Parent, which was based on our blog. And then earlier this year, February 2019, I released Winning the Heart of Your Child, which was 9 keys to building a positive lifelong relationship with your child. It was all about understanding and leveraging your influence as a parent, And then here on August 6th, in just a couple of weeks, we're releasing our first co-authored title together, myself and Kristen together, called Honestly Adoption, based after the title of our podcast. And Honestly Adoption is answers to 101 questions on adoption and foster care. So
Yes.
we created this book to be like this like go-to guide to answering as many questions as possible on the foster and adoptive journey. And what's interesting about this book is that 95 to 97% of the content in the book came from listeners and readers.
Oh, that's
and
great.
then there's another percentage of the book that actually came from adoptees. So the book ends, I think the last like 20 questions are answered by adoptees. Because what better place to
Right.
learn and grow as a parent than from the children that we care for.
Right.
You know, they're
Yeah.
the foremost experts on them. So
Right. Well, you know, I got an advance copy, and I haven't read it word for word, but I glanced through the questions and read through the ones that were interesting to me, the ones that I was like, oh, I wish I had known this. I wish I had known that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you guys did a really good job with it. And there's some on, you know, how to deal with birth families, how to deal with visits, what to do when things aren't safe, how to create a safety plan. I loved that, because there are people living out there where their kids, when they get triggered, they're not safe either for themselves or the rest of the family.
Right.
And so we don't know how to do that sometimes. There's nobody walking you through, hey, you need a safety plan. What does that even look like? You know, so rather than doing all the research, you've already done it. And so people can come in here. And then you also go through a lot of things about different behaviors, which I love. What do you do if your kid is lying all the time? If they are hoarding, if they are, you know, all the different things that we hear about in the adoption and foster world. And we know that it comes from trauma, but okay, what do I do about it?
Yeah.
And I just think that's great, because, you know, you can spend hours and hours on YouTube and Google trying to find these answers, and they're all right there.
Yeah, and that's really how we created this book, and they're short too. That's one thing. That's the chapters are super short. They have to be for 101, because every question is a chapter in the book.
Right.
So they are very short and to the point. But again, I love actually something you said, which is a huge value of the book. You said, you know, I didn't read through the whole thing, but I jumped to different parts. That's actually awesome, because that's exactly how we created this. Because you are a seasoned veteran, I'm a seasoned veteran. I'm not going to necessarily pick up a book like Honestly Adoption and read it cover to cover. Now, there are some that will, but we created it because we wanted people to look at it like, oh, you know, I'm not in the pre-adoptive phase. I've actually been doing this for 10 years, and I'm suddenly starting to notice that there's interesting behaviors that come out of nowhere. So I'm going to go right to the trauma section, or I'm going to go right to the co-regulation, re-regulation section. So, or you know what, my child is now older. They're starting to want to visit with their birth families. We're starting to form that relationship. How do I do that? So they can jump right to that chapter and read it. And every chapter is real, in reality, a standalone chapter intentionally. So you can jump, you know, right to a different scene. If it were a movie, you could jump right to a specific scene you wanted to watch, you know, so.
Well, and what I love also is with the rest of your content and how you are out there for the community, if somebody reads this and they're like, okay, 3 of these chapters were really important to me, but I need more, because it really helped me, but I'm still struggling to try to grasp this. And we've got a situation that's a little of this, but not exactly. Do you offer something for those people if they have questions about how to deal with some of this? How do you offer yourself for that?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we say all the time is that, you know, our team, we have a whole team of people who are dedicated to responding to, you know, if somebody messages us on Facebook, we have a dedicated team of people that respond to Facebook messages. Of course, we also have, you know, our ongoing mentoring, coaching that we do. We do a 12-month coaching program, and then we also have our membership site, which parents can log on and chat with a real-life foster adoptive parent, or video chat like we're doing with a real-life parent. So So that's really, I mean, our team we're always responding to messages, interacting with people, because you do read a book and you're like, well, that's, I don't know how I can never get in contact with the author.
Right.
We do the best we can to always be available, and we make that a value in our entire company, because we know how isolating this can feel at times.
Yes.
And so it's one thing to read a book, but then to be able to connect. I just, in fact, Replanted conference, which is coming up in October in Chicago, I was just interacting with them, giving them all my travel details and giving my breakout session synopsis and everything. And the question back was, now, you said that you were going to be at your resource table, but I thought you had people coming to man your table. And I said, oh, I do, but it's a goal for us to be out there to interact with people.
Right.
It's not just us teaching and then us not being there. So yeah, my team members will be there, but then I'm also going to be there as much as I can. So I want to make sure that we can do that. And it's because we are personally involved on this journey with parents. So we want to be available as best we can.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to miss you at Replanted this year, because I'm going to be a grandma right about that time.
Nice. So. Congratulations.
Yeah, so I'm like, ooh, that is like a week before. I'm not going.
Yeah, nowhere, man. You are grounded.
I'm home. I'm home.
Yeah.
So, well, Mike, I just love your heart, and Kristen's too, for what you offer to the adoption and foster community, because as you said, it is very isolating, and to be able to have these resources right in your own home and feel like you're part of a community and be able to get the help and support that you need is so important. So thank you, thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you do as well.
Well, we've been good resources for each other. People have contacted me through, my being on your podcast, and hopefully you'll get the same here too. So again, it's confessionsofanadoptiveparent.com.
Correct, yeah. Correct. Or honestlyadoption.com. That's the podcast.
Super, super. All right, Mike. Well, thanks so much. Tell Kristen and the kids hi. And we will see you next year back on Broken and Brilliant.